What is up, my fellow creatives and loves? I am going to do a quick video today on how to set up your workspace in a new document. So I will pretend as if I do not have any files set up right now. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to save this workspace right now just so I can show you how you can recreate this exact workspace in just a moment. So when you open up Photoshop, it probably looks a little something like this. Now we have two options to create a new file. We can go to this Create New button, or we can do File New. So let's start with File New. And you'll see that I already have some settings set up for how I typically like to do my sublimation file. But let's pretend as if you had the default Photoshop size selected. How would you change these numbers to make sure that you get the same exact setup that I have? So first things first, I'm going to put my width is 13 because we're usually doing 13 by 19. So my height is going to be 19. The resolution, I only do 150 dpi because I noticed that the sublimation printer does not necessarily need higher than that. It takes it longer to print, and sometimes it's trying to lay down too much ink based on my personal experience. You might have a different experience. If so, please voice those to me and I'd love to hear about it. I design in the RGB color mode. Although it uses CMYK ink, it's usually trying to mimic the RGB colors from your screen. If you're using like the Epson 7710, 7720, basically your standard desktop printers, you get into large format printers, it might be a different story. But RGB color mode is going to be the color mode you're working in. The color profile here, I like to use my Epson IJ Printer 07. That typically is the one that does best for me with color matching with my ink. And that is it. So if I want to save these things, I could go here to this download button, and I'm going to put innate sublimation 13 by 19, and then I'll put like a -2 at the end. That's saving that preset. Now you see that preset saved. I can click on that, create a new document, and if I wanted to create another new document, let's say I already have an image open, you can go to File New as well, and you'll see that that option is available to select that setup, and you do not have to type those numbers in ever again. So that's your first tip. Secondly is, how do you get these workspaces to look like my workspaces when I'm using Photoshop and also recording the videos for you? So the key is this button right here. This menu option is called Window. So Window allows for these different windows to either pop up or not pop up. So let's say, for instance, we want to see the pattern window. It's not something that would normally be open. So if we click on it, it makes it visible and I can see patterns. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to create a shape here. And I just drag that pattern inside of that shape. That's not, necessarily the tutorial right now. I'm just letting you know that that's where that window would have been helpful for. So if I close this window, I can just go to close, and now it's no longer there. You have some pre-made workspaces, and this is what I would like you to definitely pay attention to right now. Definitely go through all of these. I will tell you right now that Essentials is pretty much what Photoshop starts you off as. I typically use the workspace called Graphic and Web, and then I modify it to my liking. So let's say I've already modified it and I want to clean it up so that it looks exactly how yours would look. I'm going to reset it. Now once I reset it, it shows me exactly what it looks like from the Photoshop settings, and I am going to modify this setup. So you see your tools over here on the left hand side. You can also change that if you right click and you edit your toolbar. If there's a tool that you want to see more of, for instance, I use a lot of the fill tool and the fill bucket and the gradient tool. So they are in the same pretty much cubby hole, right? And if I use them so often that I want them to be in separate spaces, I want them to have their own cubby holes, then I could essentially make its own station there. I would have to, of course, move something or make something else not visible, or combine it with another tool where that tool would be at the very top so it would be most visible. However, I don't do that because when I'm making videos for you all, I want you to be able to pretty much see the same thing that I'm seeing. And I don't want you to spend so much time trying to figure out, well, how come her gradient and her fill bucket are on the top layer and mine isn't? I want you to get confident enough to where you can change these around and redo them. But let's say, for instance, let's see, where is, I could change the order, and I can make paint bucket always be above the gradient tool. Hit done. And just depending on the last one that you use, it may or may not be the first one. But now paint bucket is at the top. So you can definitely rearrange these. I suggest you leave them as is and really just learn these tools. Hover over them and see what it says that it does. And you can even go to the help file and look up like rectangle tool or whatever it's telling you it is so that you learn more about that tool. Of course, you can always Google it, YouTube it, all that good stuff. So next up, I want to show you how I pretty much modify my windows over to the right hand side. I don't use libraries. I feel like the libraries kind of slows me down if I have a slow internet connection because it uses the cloud. So I usually close that tab. I have my properties there. Layer comps, I'm not using that, so I can close that. I do use my character, paragraph, and glyphs quite often. Glyphs not so much. The only time I use glyphs is if I'm trying to find a character that's not a common character. For instance, something that has the accent over it, or a symbol, or even like the swatches when it has like an alternate to a letter E that has like the scroll afterwards. I will go to my glyphs, and then that way I can see if that type of alternative exists within that font. Properties, definitely, that's going to be where you find your size, the fill, in this case I have a shape right now, so I have a fill and I have a stroke, but depending on what you have selected in your layers, it will allow you to view the properties for what is selected. So you see now that I'm selected on the background, I don't have any data here, but as soon as I select one of my layers, I have some data here for my properties. Now, another thing you can do, you can collapse. I just collapsed it, and you can expand with the little double arrows there. So right now I have history, color, and swatches there. And I'm going to tell you what I typically do. I will take my layers and put it in this particular panel because my layers are usually very long, and I like for it to have a full column that I can expand and see there. Swatches, color. I don't need to be a full tall column, and neither do swatches, so I might put those there. And let's see what else. History, I definitely need to see the long history. Layers, I need to see the long layers. And that is essentially it. So now I can take this, and then when I have a workspace that I really want, I can save it. So I'm going to create a new workspace, and I'll call this Shannon. Dang, I can't even spell my own name today. Innate space. And I'm going to save this as space 2 because I just did this before. I'll go ahead and save everything as is. Save. So then that way, let's say somebody else, got all my stuff and changed the workspace, or let's say you updated your Photoshop or uninstalled it, reinstalled it. These should save. So let's just say, for instance, somebody set it to painting instead. And you might like painting. As a matter of fact, I think brushes is a popular one to have on your panel too, without having to have the brush selected. Because if I select one of these brushes, it automatically takes me to the brush mode. So it can go either way, but you'll also notice that if you select brushes, you will also have this panel available here. So you might find it redundant to have it in both locations. So anyhow, if I want to go back to my workspace, Shannon Innate Space, there I go. That's it. So I hope that helped you figure out how to set up your new artboard or your new project. It also helps you to see how your workspace should be looking. Eventually, we'll probably be going through a tutorial where we go through some of these most essential tools, and that'll be another quick tip video. But for now, Workspace is good. Now your space should look a lot like mine when I'm creating the videos, and you should have a easier time following along with me. And that should be it for now. I'm going to check in to see if you have any questions, if anyone happens to be live right now and have any live questions. Hey loves, I see I have a few people here. I was recording this video for Alicia. So, and she may not be here because by the time I got this live video up, it was, I recorded it once and it didn't go through. So this is take 2 and just seeing if y'all have any questions about how to set that up. And that was a common question that I had. How come I don't see all of the tools and the windows like you see them? And this was my answer to that question today. So I'm going to go ahead and close this video out if there are no questions on this. And I probably will be uploading another video shortly. And this one will probably be on how to create a all-over design from a 13 by 19 because that was another question we had. So that's another quick tips video to work with. Alrighty loves, I will check y'all in a bit. Thank you all for joining. Love ya.